So here I am back again, and I wanted to demonstrate a couple of fun and, well, I'd say probably very ecologically friendly art projects, because sometimes we find canvas that other people have given away or pieces of art that they've experimented with and they end up in a thrift shop, and we can get them for a song and a prayer. And I just wanted to demonstrate how I might treat this particular kind of project where I find someone else's art that may or may not be loved anymore. And I do want to say that I'm grateful for the artist, and I think that all art is beautiful in its own way. But here is just an opportunity to transform it into something else. Okay, away we go. So here we are at project 2, and this was a lovely thrift store find. It had a lot of heart and maybe just needs a little love. Somebody kind of sort of finished it, but I was looking through my photographs and my images, and I decided to use something from the past here, as I often do. And I wondered how I can incorporate that background of a heart into my new piece. So I quickly got out my gesso and just started covering. I didn't think that I could use the actual shapes of the heart, but I thought maybe I could salvage some color underneath. So I started to use my brush, or the end of my brush, to draw some circles and squiggles into the background in hope that maybe that will give me an idea of where to take this next. When I was looking at this from a little bit afar, I was still not really satisfied, so I thought maybe more gesso. No matter what, there's going to be a little bit of an underpainting happening, but I would say this is an example of one that I didn't use a whole lot of the original painting. It's a nice canvas. Somebody had applied a lot of paint to it, but it just wasn't really my sentiment, this painting. So I'm just trying to do something to mix it up, to make it a little different. It's hard to know whether the gesso alone will do it, though. I'm not seeing really much in the way of results, so I decided to use a little bit of gray acrylic paint mixed in with my white. And as I apply the gray paint, I'm again taking the end of my paintbrush and just making some swirly designs in the piece. And I'm liking that texture, and I'm liking what's happening with those colors. So you see, I've used the colors underneath in a way, even though they're not technically the way the original artist had intended. I think that it's giving me a sense of where this vintagey piece is going to go. Again, I might take my image and hold it up against the painting just to see whether this works. For an image like this, where the car is partially cut off and the building, I work with that at the edge of the canvas. So I'll take that piece right up to the corner, and the woman, obviously someone very high fashion from, probably the 1940s, 50s, and I guess probably starting with the car. The way I remember old cars is certain tints, and this particular tint or hue is the turquoise, which works to me very well with the image of the car. The other thing I'll say, when I'm applying the paint, I use a little bit of gel medium, sometimes a little water, but I like gel medium because it gives me a little flow over the image. I'll also mention I've already adhered this image to the canvas. I'm not just painting it in the air. I just skipped a step because we've already been over this with the first project, so I just assumed that you didn't want me to be laborious about giving you the steps all over again. That particular image is now adhered to the front of the canvas. And gel medium was also applied to the top before I painted. So just so you know that, it's not just magically appeared there. And I'll just keep working with the turquoise. I might add another layer later because it's quite gray underneath. But for now I'm leaving it as the same for the grandma in the background. I was going to take her out, but I kind of like her. And at this point, I'm looking at the female figure and wondering what I need to do to kind of make her pop up a little bit from the background, because the background's a little busy with the design. So I'm starting with just some shades of pink. And I never put my initial layer on too heavy because I want to be able to see the drawing underneath. So if I'm very, very careful, I should be able to still follow the lines. Later I added a little bit of yellow for the hat, and I'm pretty pleased with the piece. I may go back and take a look at it later and see if I want to add or subtract anything, but at this point I'm pretty happy with it. Let's move on to the next project. Project 2 was what I saw as I quite liked this landscape. It was simple. It wasn't particularly my style, but I think it captured all the elements of the landscape with the reflection in the water, the deer drinking out of the lake. It was a nice picture, lovely painting. The peachy tones were not tones I would normally use, so I thought I would try to change them with my own shades of blue, turquoise, and gray, and see what a difference that would make in this piece. You're really just playing around with what you have. I tried to stay with the general feeling of the piece, the reflections in the water, the deer, which I'll end up changing, but at this point I'm using the deer as something to pay attention to. But I'm using colors that I enjoy. And also to, if there's some shapes I already like, I'll stay with them and I might add a little bit of extra color. There was a lot of green in this. I wanted to tone the green down a little bit as well too, with some brown and some ochre shades. I think the difference in this piece will happen with the figure, because the figure adds a whole different dynamic to the painting. And this is one that you can just play as you go along. The beauty about acrylic paints is that you can just continue to layer them. So if you're not happy, you can go over it again. And this painting might be one that I look at in a few days and say, I think I still want to make a few more changes, which is really lovely that you can do that. I use a little bit of gesso in places where I want to do some higher coverage. And then I would just say blend, blend, blend. At this point I was being careful going around the deer, thinking I would use it, but you'll see later I decided to take the deer out because I felt a little bit bad. This was a deer that was painted by somebody else, and it really had a sense of their identity. So I see how I'm even eliminating the signature there, because we're making it into a new painting. So thank you to the original artist, but we'll move on and see what we can accomplish here. So anything I want to stay, I'm painting a little more carefully around. Anything else that I don't want to stay, I'm taking out completely. I'm just kind of dotting. Often when I'm not completely sure with the paint shade, I'll mix it really super thin with medium, and then just dot it on like you saw me doing there with the brush. I'm leaving a little bit of the peach shining through, but I'm really taking a lot of it out. That for me is the big change. Just say no to peach. It did look fine for the other artist's painting, but I'm just not feeling that that would be a shade I would use. So I guess the main message here is to be looking at what you're doing, always thinking about how do I make this my own? How do I put my own stamp on this? And what would be, like for me, a Heather Murray painting rather than a Van Gogh painting, for instance. So here we are. I'm just taking a look at it a little bit from far, more coverage, smudging, a little bit of gesso mixed in so we get some good coverage. And a little bit more, I guess you could say I've blended a little bit more gray tones in with my turquoise. The strong turquoise was just a bit too strong. So gray always helps me to give it a different moody feel. See how it's getting moodier. And now I've added my figure. That seemed to happen really fast, but I already knew where my placement was going to be. And one thing I knew for sure is I wanted part of her anyway to pop up a little bit more from the landscape, and red is a good pop-up color, at least for me. So I'm adding a little bit of medium all around, but I'm also, as I did before, the medium is put on the back of the images, like I'm doing here for the new deer, and also on the canvas itself. So that'll give you a nice flush result. And what I would do also is run my brush over top, because I think that's also helps with a bit of medium as well. And then when you paint it, it makes it easier to paint your image as well. So there's deer. I decided to go all out and change the deer and the landscape somewhat, and then add my figure. And she also has a green skirt because I figured that would give her like a nature girl look for this particular piece. She's posing by a lake. It's, yeah, I really like the way this came together, and thank you to the other artists for helping me with that. It's like a collaboration by the time we finish. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you find some excellent thrift finds out there that you can redo and make them your own paintings. Okay, so long for now, and happy creating.